Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, State Farm, and WeatherTech. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, Brian Robinson.
Hello and welcome to MotorWeek Podcast number 170, believe it or not. And joining us this week is our road test producer, Ben Davis.
Hey, guys.
Online content coordinator, Greg Carlos.
That's me.
Via phone from the great state of Florida, Lauren Morrison, FYI reporter.
Oh, hello.
And our video producer slash editor slash producer, Joe Lago.
Thanks.
Who has many fans out there, I'm sure.
Sure. Follow me on Twitter at MWJoelago.
All right. So this podcast, well, the usual look at some road test cars, as well as a lightning round, and a viewer question, and maybe even a rant and rave. Help yourself, Benny D. All right, moving on. Our first car that we've tested recently is the Kia Stinger.
Awesome.
Stinger, not stinker.
Stinger.
All right, who wants to get us started on that one?
I was pretty impressed with it. We had the 3.3-liter twin-turbo V6.
The GT.
Yes. And a lot of people, since I'm in charge of our social media, there's been a lot of people who really respond well to the car. And for good reason. It's a good-looking car from most angles. I can't say from every angle. Really shocked with the engine. It's good. It's torquey, and
That's the same engine that's in
low.
Genesis vehicles, right?
Yeah, I think the G80 now has it, and does the G90 get that as well?
Yeah, the G. I don't know. It's a good question.
I think definitely the G80.
What's the G70 though? Is the Hyundai version of the Kia Stinger, right? There's a new Hyundai coming out that's basically a Hyundai version of the Stinger. But anyway,
They're definitely getting their money's worth from the platform.
Yeah, fast and pretty easy to drive fast. And even the chassis is pretty well sorted out. It can be a little soft at times. And if you're going to compare it right to a German sedan, you're going to be probably a little bit disappointed, especially if you're used to how a German sedan drives. But really not bad, I think, for a first effort from Kia. Solid, for sure.
I'd definitely like to get that out on a road course and actually feel what its characteristics are at the limit, because it felt great at the track, but again, there was Jersey walls to the left and the right and had a little bit of mild understeer near the limit, but it was quickly overcome by some induced oversteer. And I think I could have exploited that a little more, but I was scared that I was going to wreck it. Definitely a car I'd love to get out on the track. I hear, looking at this paper, I got a piece of paper in my hand. Looks like it starts like little under $40,000. I was wondering if I couldn't find the price on the one we tested at all. Does anybody know that info?
Well, it had all-wheel drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it was. I think just under 50, probably.
Just under 50.
I think I don't think you can spend more than 50.
It had
That's a good
launch
chunk.
control too, which I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know why, but it has it. I guess is that just something that sports cars need
Because
now
they
to have
can,
launch control?
yeah.
Yeah.
That must be like.
It wasn't an aggressive one by any means.
My
but
guess is it probably
helped.
doesn't cost that much extra money to put it in a car.
And most of these cars outside of the Hellcats and stuff aren't quarter-mile strip cars, are set up for road use anyway, street or track use. You
were talking about road course, and I did some road course at the Hyundai Proving Grounds when I went on an early launch, and it was.
Tell me more.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said. I just felt it was very responsive. That was probably the biggest takeaway I had for the car. And I think the big story is Kia poached BMW M, like their main ride and handling engineer from BMW. He's working for Kia in Germany now, doing all the setup in the Nürburgring. So that's why Hyundai and Genesis stuff has come a long way on ride and handling recently.
So there is throttle-induced oversteer that you can use pretty easily?
In the rear-wheel drive one, for sure. Well,
Okay.
the one we have is all-wheel drive.
Right.
Obviously, that becomes a little more difficult.
Okay, good.
It's also
yeah.
you can turn traction, everything completely off too, which
That's
is
what I had.
not a given these days because
Yeah.
sometimes
Some
you can
cars
turn
still-
things off and it still shuts you down.
That's
Right,
true.
it says
didn't
off,
intervene
but it's
at
not
all.
actually off.
Right.
Now, I would ask about the engine. I drove a Genesis that had that 3.3 turbo, and the Genesis was like library quiet inside, but then you get on it and it would move. Was there a little bit of nice engine sound in there, or what's the, without all the luxury
I thought
accoutrements?
so, but it's also artificially piped in, and you can control the volume for that too. I didn't turn
Oh, really?
all the way off to see how much I was getting force fed, but I'm just the kind of guy where everything can be louder, and I would make it louder in the aftermarket for sure. But it did sound good.
Yeah, because I was editing a road test for a different luxury brand that had a twin turbo V6, and man, it just sounded lame. Doing the 0 to 60 times and stuff. I won't reveal what it was, but it just nothing.
Wow.
So that's why
We're
I'm.
going to isolate that audio.
That
for
is an
something.
annoying exhaust.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. So I didn't get to go to the track for the Stinger, so I'm curious if it sounds a little bit more exciting because
That's something
some
we'd
of
have
these.
to ask Ashley. Did you remember? I was in another car. How did the Stinger sound? Ashley's in our audience right now.
Studio audience.
Grab the mic.
Oh, here
It
we
might,
go.
it might not be on. Either way,
Hi, audience.
it's not on.
It's not on.
We
here.
can
Ben's.
talk.
Talking to
Talking
Ben's
about-
mic.
There you go.
No one
Ashley
wants to hear
Gaither's
that.
our new assistant road test
Yeah,
producer.
welcome to the crew, by the way.
You haven't seen
Yeah.
her already in a road test. She's awesome.
Hi, audience. I generally thought that the car sounded okay. I mean, I didn't think that there was anything lacking in the sound, but
It's not going to
I
stir
do-
your soul, though.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't anything that I would, be crazy about personally. I think that I need a little bit more like a Porsche to get my engine going than a Kia. So sorry, Kia.
Wow. All right. Guess you,
It's
Pro
hard to
for
make
getting
a
any more Kia
good
test
sounding
cars, but that's
V6
right.
twin turbo. You can get a straight 6 or even a V8. That's where you get the good sound.
Straight
Yeah.
six.
good sounding V6s are few and far between. There's nothing. That ain't new.
Although Camaro makes pretty good sounding V6.
Camaro.
America.
America.
Let's move on to the Land Rover Range Rover Velar.
Oh, yeah.
This is, I guess, fits in mid-size. The Range Rover Evoque would be smaller, and the full-size Range Rover would be bigger, right?
Yep.
All right. So tell us about the Velar, Greg.
I thought it was a lot of show. I didn't get to drive it as much as somebody else or other people on the staff, but it certainly passes the look test. And then when you get inside, this doesn't happen to me very often, and I am a millennial. I was a little bit intimidated by the amount of tech inside of this Velar. I mean, you're hit right in the face with screens here that are moving out at you, and that's even after you get in a car where the door handles come out Tesla style on you. But it's once you get used to it, it's pretty cool. You get over that wow factor. It's still
Screens on screens.
as neat as it is. It's like once I'd have to wonder what happens once you get over that initial wow phase when you own the car.
And yeah, amen, Greg. It would take you quite a while to learn all that stuff, and you there is a sense of pride I'd imagine you'd have once you mastered that system. But at what point does that become texting and driving when you're using that stuff?
sure.
You know what I mean? It's unbelievable.
Is it just all touch panel? Is that the deal?
No, there are you
There's
can
some
control
knobs.
quite a bit on this from the steering wheel menu buttons regarding the screens that show up in your gauge cluster. And you can turn the gauge cluster into an entire screen, much like Audi's can
Right,
do
but
now.
I mean, it's got knobs, and the knobs have little digital readouts on the knobs, and then
Yeah.
there's a screen
Yeah,
here,
that-
and then
but
there's
There's a screen inside the knob, right? Or like you can push the button on the inside the knob, which then changes it to say driving mode, and then you can hit it again, and then it becomes for something completely different.
the menus are deep,
it would be really, really cool if you didn't have to drive at the same time.
and the choices are
This is
many.
the perfect autonomous car candidate, really.
It's super involving and engaging as
Let it
long
drive
as you're
itself.
parked.
Yeah. While you're
But-
trying to figure out how to change the radio station.
I don't know. Somebody had to have driven it more than me. How did it actually
I'll tell you who
drive?
drove it the most is probably Ashley.
All right.
Wanna
Oh,
say something about
okay.
that?
coming
Hold
back
on.
again.
She's coming back.
We'll see if it measures up to a Porsche.
So my complaint about it was probably the seated heats and the massaging features that
Wait,
were
that's a
in
complaint?
it. Well,
You're
this is
complaining about a seat
this
that
is my
massages your back.
She's been here 1 week and she's
So
complaining about seated
I
heats.
found it very difficult to just switch in between those functions, and let alone turn off the massage.
I was gonna say, nothing freaks you out
feature.
more when it's like the massager's on and you're trying to figure out how to get that stuff shut off.
I mean, I think that either it needed like an interval, like amount of time that it needed to be turned on and off, or something that just allowed it to quickly turn it off, because I had a hard time driving and trying to turn it off. So I think that was my biggest complaint
Stop
about
massaging
that.
me.
Stop touching me.
Abort.
Hey now.
But I do have to say I did feel rather comfortable as soon as I did learn how to control that feature. But I mean, I thought the ride was generally smooth and pretty decent. I mean, I like the size personally. So
it was large. It's only a 2-row though, right?
Yeah.
I believe so.
Not sure about that. These are good questions that we should have an answer for.
I don't know how you could get a 3rd row in there. It's pretty small. It's not a Vogue small, but it's.
I believe it was. It definitely. I'm pretty sure it was a 2-row, but it did have buttons at the back that you could operate the fold and stuff.
So,
which was kind of cool.
In regards to the tech, have we gotten to the point where there's so much tech that we take away from the luxury experience of a Range Rover, or is it still a very luxurious experience?
I think luxury and tech kind of go together, though, and I think it's luxurious technology because it's really beautiful looking. I will say that. I
think target audience would appreciate the tech, and I think they would appreciate the complexity of the tech, and that not everybody can operate it. I think that. I just think that it would definitely bond the buyer to the car, learning all that tech and showing it all off to whoever got inside. I think that that's exactly what a Land Rover buyer values.
Well said. And this just in, we have a report.
So it does have 5 seats, but other than that, I did find the overall torque and maneuverability on off-roads to be quite enjoyable. I felt the ride very smooth. I mean, especially versus, it compares to BMW in this fact that the X1 I'm talking about. But I'm just noting that.
I think I can't remember what podcast this was in because I probably talk about it every time. So you the Stinger, you can turn everything off, and I thought I had everything turned off because now I did drive it at the track. I can remember now, and I thought I had everything off, but it still shut me down like midway through, which is a shame because it seemed like it could handle more than what it would let me have. It was just always, anytime it sensed just a little bit of understeer, it would just hit the brakes and then you're done.
I remember because I threw it through the cones for a copter at the track. I had it in dynamic mode and I didn't get any kind of mitigation, but maybe I only did it one run and maybe I wasn't pushing it quite as hard.
You were in dynamic without,
mode?
I was dynamic, traction off,
Gotcha.
everything.
All right.
Thank you, Land Rover, Range Rover.
So, moving on to something much more interesting, hopefully. We turn to our FYI reporter, Lauren, and I'm not even sure what you've been up to lately, so why don't you fill us in?
I'll just jump in and tell you right now. So I just did a segment in Sacramento, California on this car club. It's a do-it-yourself classic car club. I mean, a lot of times I was just talking to Joe about, he's looking at houses now and he's, making sure that they have a large enough garage for, his cars that he could work on and stuff. But a lot of times, a lot of cities, if you live in a big city or so you rent an apartment, you don't really have the opportunity to have space, or even if you live like in a homeowners association, they don't really like, jacking up your car on blocks and stuff, working on it in the front yard, So this
it's usually about what I'm wearing. That's the problem they have with me.
So this car club was, said, hey, we recognize this problem. Let's rent out this warehouse, essentially, and kind of cordon off spots in it and just welcome members and have members come in. They, can bring your car in to do anything from like an oil change, a tune-up, to a pull-off, frame-off restoration, from the ground up. So it's really cool. I mean, I don't think it's something new where you can rent spots to work on your car. But what I found so interesting about the club was you're working on your car all the time in your own garage and you run into a problem and you're like, oh crap, what do I do? Whereas if you're in a scenario like this, there's always another gearhead, bounce ideas off of, and, ask for help. Hey, can I borrow a tool? So it's just really interesting to kind of spend the day in this car club dynamic and just kind of watch them interact with each other and just the camaraderie. So it's a pretty interesting piece, and it's going to be airing this week, I think, starting. So pretty cool. Check it out.
It's a good idea. Always somebody there to hold your beer when
it's
you're
almost like
check this out.
Like a social club.
Right, yeah. It's I edited the story. I worked with Lauren on the edit for it, and it's cool. You see cars of every shape and size there. I mean, stuff from like stuff that looks like it sat in a junkyard for 40 years to brand new, perfect, guys doing mods on new cars. And I definitely think it's something, if the price is right, it's something I'd want to join, because I know the pain of not having enough space, and it's nice to have somebody older and smarter than you to help you.
And it was really cool because a lot of times you don't have like every tool that you can ever think of, and they have a lot of tools that you could either rent or lift. I mean, you're not going to have a lift in your own home, so just really things that you might only need once or twice. You're not going to go and buy yourself. So I don't know. It's just a really cool thing, a really interesting aspect to a car club. They have monthly meetings and do fundraisers and stuff like that. But I just really thought the whole do-it-yourself concept was a pretty interesting take on a classic car club.
I have a quick question, Lauren. Not that I promote operating heavy machinery while under the influence of anything or anything like that, but I do like to enjoy a beer if I'm doing a challenging repair. I was wondering if there was restrictions against that you were aware of there or anything like that.
I didn't see any signs. I would probably say, they wouldn't encourage being drunk working on the car. But
nor would I. I was just, I do like to drink a beer, though.
I don't know
really
what fine print is on membership and working on your car, but I don't think they'd mind if you pop to top on one or two.
It's all good until they have to name a rule after you, Ben. That's
yeah,
exactly. I like a beer as red, white, and blue as the AMC I'm working on.
Thank you.
Which one of you was Joe?
I was gonna say you can catch that on MotorWeek, like I said, and it was edited this week, so it'll be on the following show. So
and just to reiterate, we don't encourage you consuming any type of alcoholic beverages around any type of vehicle.
I was just curious because I know that goes hand in hand a lot of times. So I'm sure that's not allowed. I was just curious, asking a question. That's all.
Well, thank you. We look forward to seeing that, Lauren. And feel free to jump in on our lightning round question here.
Right, ready for it.
All right. About 10 years ago, manual shift modes for automatic transmissions began to grow in popularity. Today, almost everything from ex-cono boxes.
Sorry, that's
oh my God.
For prisoners, they have their own special
econo boxes.
Oh, my bad.
Sorry, that was
My
a
bad.
typo
All
on
right.
my part.
Okay. From econo boxes to massive luxury SUVs have either paddle shifters or a plus-minus section on the shift lever. How many people actually use these manual shift modes? And is this once exclusive feature now a must-have? Who's going first? Why don't you go first, Lauren?
Okay, I'll go first. So I was reading this question. I was thinking, I don't think I ever use it like in my day-to-day life. I always, when I go on press events, I always, use them just to say I did it, say I can review it, whatever. But I don't think I ever use it like in my own personal car. I have a Subaru Legacy and it has like the plus and minus. I don't think I've ever used it. And I don't know. Why would they keep putting them in the cars though if nobody was using them? Like what? I don't get it. I personally, I don't see what they really do. I don't see. People use them.
That's the bell. If you could hear that on your end, Lauren. But
He's cutting you
Well,
off.
Joe's
ruthless.
He's by the book today, Lauren. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Who's next?
I'll go next.
all right, Benny D's jumping in.
I can imagine to flat terrain like Florida, you would definitely never need to do any plus minus work at all. And paddles itself aren't even necessary, but I would like to see a plus minus available just for hilly terrains. If you're going to be dropping an elevation for a couple of miles, you're going to need to be able to select a gear to, instead of just tearing your brakes apart. It would be nice to be able to select a lower gear.
Kind of
sure, that's the only reason you're ever going to need anything like that on a day-to-day basis.
Joe's always interrupting your
Sorry,
answers.
I'll shut
He's
up.
helping.
I'm
I'll
not
shut
sure
up.
if it's a theme or
That,
what.
that
Okay.
one was a help.
Joe, you might as well just
All
go.
right.
Go ahead, Joe.
So yes, I'm the producer. I wrote this question. It's no big mystery. It just hit me the other day. I was driving somewhere and I was kind of like tapping my fingers on the paddle shifter and I thought I never actually use these unless I'm like bored out of my mind. And so then I thought, and I remember reading magazines and stuff from 10 years ago. They would tear cars apart if they didn't have these. Like, well, everything about this car was great, but it didn't have paddle shifters, so we hate it. And it would be like a 3-row SUV. So that's what brought the question up for me. I don't think they're necessary except on sportier flavored stuff.
Yeah.
Sporty or flavored. All right. What about for the ex-cons?
The ex-Cono boxes.
Ex-con should not be put in boxes. That's all I'm saying.
Do you have it in sport flavor?
Yeah, I don't use them much, but they're definitely useful, being able to shift into a gear that the transmission wouldn't do on its own. If you're driving in the snow, or again, like Ben said, if you're a fan of engine braking, which I am on big hills, it is nice to have. I personally just like having that option there, so I'm glad it is there. But when you have, like in the Expedition, where you have the option to shift your own gears, but they're buttons behind the shifter, that's kind of weird to me. So I if you're going to have it, I would like some paddles.
Yeah, I think the big thing to keep in mind, most of them aren't for any sporty purpose, but just if you remember old school automatic Prindles where you'd have park, reverse, neutral drive, low, and then maybe another low or whatever. Now there's so many gears that they can't possibly make the shifters that long. So
Right, when
they
you-
have to put some kind of plus or minus where if you want to get into a low range.
See, I didn't think about that. That's
That's
a good
such a
one, 'cause-
Robinson way to think about it. So practical.
But
Yeah,
but
'cause you can't-
some don't even offer that at all. Some Prindle cars with no paddles don't go any lower than drive.
Or they have an S. They have Prindles
Some
instead
have a
of
sport,
Prindle.
some
Yeah.
don't.
Some have a sport flavor, and some are
Some
regular.
have cherry flavor.
All right, how about you, Ashley, since we introduced you here in this podcast?
I mean, personally, I've been driving around the BMW X1 and I enjoy doing the Tektronic. I feel like there's definitely a little bit more give and it definitely feels a little bit more like a manual. But as far as the paddles, I mean, I think like Greg was saying, I definitely appreciate the more sportier aspect of it, or, you know, like Joe Lago was saying.
The sport
So
flavor.
I just, you know, I guess it depends on when I'm using it, I think, is overall.
That's sporty
I
flavor.
think we all agree that having some sort of ability to shift is good, though, right?
Shifting is good. Shift happens.
Even if you're in an automatic. But then CVTs have it too, which is a whole other thing.
All right, and
Some
finally
of them.
our viewer question from Rick. I currently store my vehicle for several months of the year. It's a conventional gas engine, so I connect a battery maintainer while it's in storage. Very good idea, Rick. I'm considering purchasing a hybrid car or a pure EV, and I'm curious about battery maintenance. What are the effects of long-term storage of a hybrid battery? Anybody have an answer for Rick?
Good question, Rick.
Well, a lot of hybrids and EVs still have a 12-volt battery for all
They
the
all do.
in-cabin stuff. So you'll probably still want a battery maintainer on that.
Correct. Well, what about
But
the
the
big
big-
battery?
the
I think
important
that's his
battery?
concern.
Well, I would imagine it acts like any other battery, right? A lot of them now we're switching to lithium-ion batteries, and I know a lot of our camera gear and things we use are lithium-ion. The big thing with those are, like, you don't want to run them too low, and you don't want to store them too low, and you don't want to store them high either. So I'm not sure if it's the same way with the car batteries. I'd have to imagine, though, if you are going to store it long-term, I'm not sure you want to charge it all the way up and have it sitting on full charge for a long time.
I don't know if anything's changed recently, but I was on a Prius event, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, and I actually brought this question up to them. And their big thing was just to start it every other month, like once every 2 months. Just let the engine itself charge up the battery. You definitely don't want to let that main battery go dead. And the other thing they stress, and it says right there in the Prius owner's manual, is not to use a trickle charger, because on the main battery, I'm not even sure how that would be possible, but it just takes, they charge at such a low amperage that it takes forever for that main battery to charge, and it actually overheats.
Wow. That was my question.
so
If you
don't-
could
yeah.
somehow trickle a plug-in hybrid or a pure EV.
I think some people do sell a trickle charger for the main batteries, but yeah, it's a much higher amperage.
So the secret is just start it up every couple weeks or whatever.
Which
If you can. Well, what if you can't?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what if you're in a storage
may or may not
unit
be practical, correct?
Well, to take a leaf out of Pat Goss's book, I'd say read your owner's manual. I mean, surely there's an
Don't
official.
do it.
Surely in there is some kind of official or talk
Correct,
to
but
a
he's
dealer.
just thinking about whether he wants to buy one
Well,
or not.
yeah,
so-
I think you just got to remember it's still a battery. It's not like it's a completely different entity. It's still a battery and has rules.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's a great answer.
Everybody just shut up now.
All right. Anyone have a rant or rave?
I want to rant about Joe interrupting Ben. Every single.
Why don't you produce your own podcast?
What is it about that? Man, really? Joe, easy. It's been nice, guys.
I only noticed it on that one when I was all fired up. I didn't notice it ever.
I've actually got nothing.
Well, Joe,
Got anything? Ashley, you got something?
Trying to think of a
anything
car.
from the Florida
What do
office?
you hate more than another?
No,
Well,
I'm pretty calm over here. No rants, no raves.
well, we're allowed to rave too. It doesn't just have to be things we hate.
Yeah, but everybody
cares
just
about
look at the
raving?
internet.
Yeah.
Everybody likes to hate.
I will say, I really wish Range Rover would have named the Velar the Velour, and you could have got like a crushed velour interior in it, like 1980s style.
Oh, wow.
Do you know what the name Velar comes from?
No, I don't.
It goes way back to before Range Rover existed. That was the original Land Rover. The name of the concept that Land Rover created that went on to become the Range Rover brand.
It was called the Velar.
Yes.
See,
Little bit
I'm
of history
very
for it.
uncultured,
There you go.
but their website does call it the avant-garde Range Rover, so that would make sense. So.
Wow.
You know where the word javelin came from?
And on that note,
Where did it come from? All right. Oh, Ashley, we have more
here we
breaking
go.
news from Ashley.
So I need to note about the Land Rover Velar, just because I did do a little bit of driving with it. I really enjoyed and didn't enjoy the fact that the parts of the engine. So like it could definitely when not the parts of the engine, but the actual
say, which specifically
functionality.
didn't you like?
No,
Intake valve?
the functionality of it. Depending upon where I was driving, it would sense it. So I would be just in like eco mode, and I would go onto the rocks and stuff, different rocky areas, and it picked that up right away. So I thought that was kind of really interesting.
What do you
and
mean?
Like
the
terrain
driving
detection?
yeah,
mode?
the terrain.
so it would auto-detect whatever kind of terrain you were on.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I
didn't
thought
know
that
that.
was
Smarter
kind
than
of
me.
cool. So yeah, that was my little note.
We'll call that
She
a rave.
raved
Yeah,
about
we'll call that
that.
a rave. Right on.
She raved.
Very good.
I got nothing.
All right, well, we'll wrap this up then. Thanks for joining us, Lauren.
No problem.
Thank you, Lauren.
See you, Lauren.
And we'll thank David Wainwright, our audio engineer, podcast creator Bob Mixter, and of course, excellently produced by Joe Lago.
Thanks.
And
If you were a driver's seat, you would be a seated heat.
There we go.
so let's wrap it up. And just remind everyone, be sure to tune in wherever you can watch us, and keep an eye on us on the internets. And thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, State Farm, and WeatherTech. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station.